Bill Scher is joining me today. He is editor at ourfuture.org and contributing editor at Politico. Bill, you've written a bit about the Wikileaks attacks on Hillary Clinton. I believe that these attacks backfired in the sense that they only confirmed what any reasonable person already sort of knew or suspected about Hillary Clinton, right? Her ties to Wall Street, the reality that behind closed doors, she said to many of these companies, hey, you know what? It's not going to be that bad. I'm not going to be that hard on you if I'm president of the United States. I didn't really learn anything that shocked me. And I think that some people may have sort of overplayed their hand with regard to the speeches and the WikiLeaks. What do you think?
Well, I generally agree with that. If you already suspected Hillary Clinton was a calculating politician who was too close to Wall Street and isn't motivated by philosophical conviction, but does everything based on poll numbers. If you already assume that, you could have your narrative validated by the emails. If you feel that Hillary Clinton is simply a politician doing what politicians do, and there's no politician that doesn't weigh those types of considerations, and there's no campaign staff that doesn't speak in unvarnished, pointed, condescending terms when communicating privately, you would also shrug it off. So we had a 2-week period after the Podesta emails were leaked by WikiLeaks, and Hillary's numbers were slightly better after a 2-week period. Now, there's some question how our numbers will hold up after the James Comey statement, but you have 2 weeks is plenty of time to assess what the WikiLeaks impact was, and it was not negative to Hillary. And I think that is relevant not just in terms of who's going to win on November 8th, but what is the power of cyber hacking and cyber warfare. The general assumption, at least the opinion of the intelligence community, is that this is led by the Russian government that fed this stuff to WikiLeaks, that their agenda is not to elect Trump per se, but to undermine American and global faith in American democratic institutions to make people think this is rigged and this is what really goes on behind the scenes and it's untoward and it's shady. And therefore, people won't look at America as being on a higher moral authority, on a higher moral plane than Russia. But if the impact of this is people generally accepting this is what daily political life is like, and if you leaked anybody's emails, Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, you would get similar stuff. If you, not to mention Russian emails for that matter, that's not going to, that makes the tool of cyber warfare less potent.
Has the race fundamentally changed in light of the tightening national polls? I mean, earlier in the show, we sort of went through about a couple weeks ago, the Real Clear Politics average had Hillary Clinton closer to 6.5, 7 points ahead. Last week, that had been reduced to around 4.5 to 5. And then as of this morning, it's like a 2.2% average lead for Hillary Clinton in the polls. It's a pretty significant change nationally. It's not creating a huge shakeup electorally when you look at state by state polls. Is it just too early to know, really, whether these national poll tightenings are going to have an implication electorally?
Yeah, you have to be a little careful with the Real Clear Politics average here is, and I should say, one, I'm a contributor to Real Clear Politics, but two, I am not involved in the poll averaging. I'm not in their newsroom. I can't speak for them directly. So yeah. I'm speaking as much like an outsider like anybody else would. But I do know that the specific polls that get included in the average rotate depending on which polls are fresh. And there is an argument that the current polls in the average are the ones that have been more Republican leaning to date. Now there is like Rasmussen, for example, or the IBD-TIPP tracking poll.
Love that
has generally been favorable to Trump. Now you have this one example, which is catching everybody's attention, which is the ABC Washington Post poll, which has not been a pro-Trump poll, but it's had this very large swing over the past week from +12 Hillary to now It's actually +1 Hillary in the two-way and +1 Trump in the four-way. Most of that shift is before the Comey statement. And you didn't see that, and you haven't seen that kind of massive jump in other polling, and you're not seeing it in the state polling. I tend to look at what I call the Big Five, which includes ABC, Washington Post, but also CNN, Fox, NBC, Wall Street Journal, and CBS, New York Times. We haven't seen those other four polls come out in a while. So I think you want to see a number of higher quality polls, which presumably will come out between now and election day. There's only so many days left before really saying, are we seeing a true tightening here, or is this the same stable race that we've basically had for the whole year, where Hillary's in the upper 40s and Trump is in the lower 40s, and he occasionally gets to around 45 in the averages, but never really seems to break through?
When we talk about claims of a, quote, rigged election with regard to whether it's polling or whether it's the management of elections at the state level, or as Donald Trump has sort of intimated, media coverage that is negative about Donald Trump, I'm really struggling to understand why, if we are to believe the allegation from some Trump supporters and even Trump himself, that corporate media is just out to destroy Trump, why have we seen almost no coverage of the Donald Trump child rape case that is pending? There's a hearing scheduled for December 16th. I mean, if corporate media really just had it in for Trump, wouldn't they be talking about that more?
I would assume. I have to say, I haven't followed the child rape accusations very closely. I've seen a headline here or there, but I haven't personally dug into it.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, that's fascinating that you're mentioning that.
I mean, but I take your point. Obviously, if you really had it in for Trump, you would do 7 days straight on that story, regardless of what the merits of the case was, because you had it in for him. Now, I do think that Trump has had lots of negative press, but so has Hillary Clinton. They both have had inordinate amount of negative press. I mean, Hillary's negative press goes from the beginning. There was a good time in the primary where Trump's press was, "Wow, nothing affects Trump. He defies the rules of political convention. He's leading a true juggernaut." And Hillary is just this stodgy, awful person with the Democratic establishment who can't answer questions about her emails. I mean, we have plenty of reporting about her emails and the Clinton Foundation and changes in her position. So you really can't argue that she's had some sort of free ride here. And Trump's negative coverage is almost solely all of his own making. I mean, it's not like the press has to, one, make up stuff, or two, talk about things that he's not talking about. When a negative story gets raised, he is always feeding the story and giving the media the obligation to cover what he is saying. So this is an example of media management 101 being violated by Donald Trump than a matter of the media being rigged against Donald Trump. Hillary gets plenty of bad coverage, but her team, I wouldn't say perfectly, but does a far better job of how to respond to negative media coverage than Donald Trump does.
Are you worried that as a result of some of the coverage, as a result of claims of a rigged election or a not rigged election, is there any concern that the sort of net effect of all of this might lead would-be Hillary Clinton voters not to vote, either in early voting or on election day, in a way that could impact some swing states?
Well, this is, I think, the big wild card that you really cannot discern from polls. There was a question before the Comey announcement when all the polling showed sizable leads for Clinton. How would that affect turnout? Would that cause complacency on the Democratic side? Would that cause resignation on the Republican side? Would that boost third-party voting because there wouldn't be a sense of concern of being a spoiler? Or would third-party vote be depressed because they don't have a lot of money, not getting a lot of media attention? So there's all sorts of unknowns there. Now, with the Comey announcement, regardless of the polling, there is at least a sense in Trump world that the race is more winnable. So perhaps you would have a boost in Republican turnout relative to what you might have had a week ago. but you also may have a surge in Democratic turnout because now that sense of complacency is being mitigated. And maybe that all depresses third-party turnout because maybe I am going to be a spoiler, so I should be a little careful about that. So there's all sorts of unknowns here that we're just not going to be able to really know until the voting actually occurs.
Well, that is already happening in terms of early and absentee ballots, and we're only a week away from November 8th. So we'll be able to end the speculation soon and just have actual numbers, which I don't know about you, Bill, but I'm ready to move on at this point.
You'll miss it. You'll miss this election when it's over.
Bill Scher, editor at ourfuture.org, contributing editor at Politico. Thanks as always, Bill.
My pleasure.